when the college football playoff grew from 4 teams to 12 teams, it was obviously going to take away some of the cachet, the interest, etc., around bowl games. And I think it'll be interesting to see what it does for interest in bowl games outside of the college football playoff. Do people still care about the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl? And I know that there's a certain portion of the college football audience that says there's too many bowl games. Yeah, well, it sure beats watching The Young and the Restless the day after Christmas at 2 o'clock now, doesn't it? So I don't think there can ever be too many bowl games. But I do think that there can be some diminished interest in them. And yet, there are still, to me, 5 games throughout the college football bowl game schedule that aren't in the playoff that are going to be really interesting to me. And I think they should be interesting to you, too. So here are the 5 games that I think are really, really intriguing that are outside the college football playoff. The first is the Pop-Tarts Bowl in Orlando, not because they're going to eat a real live mascot on the field after the game. It's Iowa State versus Miami. And I think that, and this is somewhat of a recurring theme, that they are 2 teams that felt like Iowa State had a pathway to the college football playoff. They had the opportunity to win their way into what everybody wanted. Miami, all they had to do was not lose 2 of their last 3, and they were in. And they lost 2 of their last 3. And so for 2 teams who probably view the end of their seasons as extremely disappointing, but are relatively pretty close to each other in the college football playoff rankings, I want to see what that game looks like. And so Iowa State versus Miami, obviously not a long trip from Miami. Are they going to be psyched up and excited that their bowl game is in Orlando? I think it would be hard because, like, you live where people vacation already, right? Like, you live where people seek out to spend their time away from home. Meanwhile, Iowa State in Orlando in December is going to be happier than Winnie the Pooh finding a pot of honey. It's going to be through the roof. But are they focused and prepared to play a football game? So that's the first one. The second one I find, and there's a little quirk in the college football bowl game schedule where the teams that moved conferences this year, the Power 5, Power 4 teams that moved conferences this year, are still bound to bowl ties from their previous conference. So the Colorado, Arizona State, Arizona, Utah triumvirate, even though they are in the Big 12, still have Pac-12 bowl game tie-ins. Washington and Oregon have Pac-12 bowl game tie-ins. USC, UCLA have Pac-12 bowl game tie-ins instead of Big 10 bowl game tie-ins. And so when that happens, you get a situation where 2 Big 12 teams are going to play each other in a bowl game. BYU is going to play Colorado in the Alamo Bowl in San Antonio. Now, it's interesting because they are 2 of the top 4 teams in the Big 12 that did not play each other. BYU and Colorado were not on each other's regular season schedules. So you get this interesting quirk where 2 teams from the same conference are going to play each other, but it's the first time that they played each other as members of the Big 12. So I find that incredibly interesting, coupled with the fact that Deion Sanders swears that Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, Shiloh Sanders are all going to play in the bowl game. And I just wonder how true that is. I wonder if that doesn't become the closer we get, especially if Travis Hunter wins the Heisman Trophy on Saturday, and somebody tells him, like, hey, you're going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. You're going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And the same for Shedeur Sanders, that somebody doesn't say, hey, you can't do this. You just can't. So I'm interested to see how that all plays out. But BYU versus Colorado, 2 teams who are ranked in the top 25, 2 teams who finished in the top 4 of the Big 12, are playing each other in a bowl game. And I find that interesting as all get out. The third one is one of those kind of classic, are you motivated? Do you want to be here? Because it shows a lot. I don't know. Like Brent Venables isn't on the super hot seat right now at Oklahoma. I don't think so. I think it can get hot, real hot. And I think this game that they're playing in the Armed Forces Bowl in Fort Worth against Navy can tell a lot, because Oklahoma is not getting a great bowl destination, because there's probably a decent chunk of their players that are from the greater Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. So you're going home for a bowl game. The opponent is not sexy. It's not a great location. You finished 6-6. You beat the hell out of Alabama to ruin their season. But how motivated are you to play an extra game? How motivated are you to go up against Navy? I think you can learn a lot from that game. And I kind of hope, for Oklahoma's sake, you learn a lot of good, positive things rather than bad, negative things that put a sour taste in your mouth that make you think like, okay, so 2025 is not going to go the way we want to go. And by the way, somewhat of an offshoot is a lot of these things need to be put in the proper context, because depending on transfer portal status, who is staying in the transfer portal but staying in the program through the bowl game, all of those things that can be weird and funky factor into the games on the field. So I don't put a ton of stock on, well, the SEC went 11-2, or like I don't necessarily, outside of probably the playoff. For instance, like in the what used to be the Outback Bowl, Alabama is just on the outside looking in of the college football playoff. And they're going to play so Alabama is the fourth best team in the SEC according to the college football playoff. They're going to play the seventh or eighth best team in the Big Ten. And so when that's not like 7-5 Michigan is going to play 9-3 Alabama, that is not necessarily an apples to apples thing. So I don't put a ton of stock in the like, well, the ACC went 3-8 during the bowl season. There's a lot of factors that go into success, and they are exhibitions at the end of the day. They are glorified scrimmages outside of the playoff. And the second we start treating them as such, we're probably better off. But then the final two games on my list is almost like the college football equivalent of the NIT. And, well, that's not necessarily true. These teams won their conference. And college football at the FBS level is the only sport in college athletics where by winning your conference, you don't get an automatic berth to the dance, which I think at some point we'll probably get to like a 16 or 20 team playoff where every FBS college football conference champion gets in, because when you have 9 conferences and 20 slots, you're still going to find a way to bitch about the SEC only got 6 teams in the playoff. But I think we might get there at some point, because that is kind of a glaring omission, right? That in every other sport, you win your conference championship, you have the opportunity to play for a national championship, except for college football. But the Cure Bowl in Orlando is Ohio versus Jacksonville State. Ohio won the MAC, Jacksonville State won Conference USA, and then the Independence Bowl in Shreveport is Marshall, who won the Sun Belt, and Army, who won the American. Army, I think, is very this is like a quasi, I wish there was a college football NIT, where these 4 teams who won their conference championships but didn't get into the playoff, they play each other, and then Army plays Ohio at some neutral site. Like, we'll get them a game in San Diego and put them against each other, and they're the group of 5 national champ or whatever. I get on board with it. I could absolutely get on board with it. But it's the 4 teams who won their conference championships but didn't make the college football playoff. And for it to just kind of play out that way, I think is really interesting and intriguing and compelling. And so I'll be tuning in to watch Ohio versus Jacksonville State. I'll be tuning in to watch Marshall versus Army, because, one, I work from home. So any sport you can get on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to take it. Like, I'll watch the most random Major League Baseball games on Wednesdays at 12:35 p.m. because you know what? They're on. So I'm definitely going to watch a bowl game from Orlando or Shreveport or Detroit or wherever the hell it's going to happen, because you know what beats college football at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when you're not really doing a whole lot but pretending you're working? Not much. So this little quasi college football NIT, Ohio versus Jacksonville State in the Cure Bowl in Orlando, and Marshall versus Army in the Independence Bowl in Shreveport is intriguing to me. And so those are the 5 games that I view as really, really interesting outside of the college football playoff. Want to know what games you're looking forward to in the bowl game schedule? Who's your team playing? What outside of that are you like, yes, I can't wait to watch is it Texas State versus, I got to find it real quick. Because there's going to be 1 million points scored in the Texas State North Texas First Responder Bowl in Dallas. That is Hank Hill's wet dream of Texas State versus North Texas in Dallas. Going to be 1 million points scored. That could be a game that's on your radar. Let me know in the comments down below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.